In this demo, we're going to talk about setting up the interactive dashboard. So this is the final dashboard. This is what it'll look like when we're finished. As you can see, as you move the scroll bar, a selector changes. Now this is our familiar tornado data. So here we have the total tornadoes over the year range 1950 to 1994. And then as I move the selector, a specific year point is highlighted, and you can see that the value 608 is what the total tornadoes are for that year. And we also see over here that the year selected is 1969, and then here we have the per month breakdown. In addition to that, we also have these charts here which sort of function as a histogram for each month, how many tornadoes were there. As you can see, it's fairly simple, but it provides a lot of functionality. So I'm going to start over here on the tornado example tab. So the first thing we want to do is insert a scroll bar. So I'm going to go over here to the developer tab. Here's our insert toolbox. I'm going to select this scroll bar right here. And now, because I want the scroll bar to be horizontal, I'm just going to draw one that's fatter than it is long. So I'll just draw one like this. You see, it put a nice scroll bar down here. So what I want to do is create the selector mechanism on this chart. And I have the scroll bar, and the scroll bar is going to be what allows me to do that. So the first thing is, it's always a good idea to hook the scroll bar up. So with the scroll bar selected, you can hit Control click. I'm going to go up to the formula bar. I'm going to type in equals, and I'm going to select cell D32 because I have the scroll bar value here. So good idea always to label it, and then I'll test. It's always a good idea to test. And we see that it works. So if I go to my tornado data, and hopefully this tornado data is familiar to you by now, we have a series of years, and then we have the totals, and then we have the per month breakdown. Now, if I know my scroll bar is on, let's say it's on 2, I know that I want to pull back data in the second record place. Well, how do I know that? Well, if this is on a 2, that means I'm referring to the second data point in, and that data point is going to be 1951. So what I'm interested in is that year and the total tornadoes, and you'll see why. That's going to help us create our selector mechanism. So here, to pull the second row of information in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in equals, and here we're going to use index, and the array that we're interested in is going to be this year array right here. So I've selected it. I've done that quickly by selecting A6 and hitting Control-Shift down. I'll hit F4 to lock it in. Not that I'm going to drag it, but always a good idea to lock things in. So I'll go back to tornado example. And then I'm going to use scroll bar value here. So this is the value that keeps changing. So as I keep changing this number, as I keep increasing it, it's increasing the year. And I also want it to return the total tornadoes. So here I'll do the same thing. I'm going to type in equals index. I'm going to go to the total tornadoes here. So I selected B6. Control-Shift down to select the entire used range. I hit F4 to lock it in. I hit comma before I switch back to the next page. And then I'll select this scroll bar value again. So both of these are hooked up to the back-end data, meaning that at the 32nd row, we're dealing with the data from 1981, and in 1981 there was a total of 782 tornadoes. So now what I can do is I want to add a data point to this scatter plot. And I can use this information here to create that data point. So I'm going to right click here, I'm going to click select data, and now you see right now all that's being shown on that scatter plot are the years and the frequency of tornadoes. So I'm going to hit add here to add a new series. I'm going to type in selector, and now Excel is looking for an X and Y value. Well, turns out I have these X and Y values down here in D33 and D34. So for the current X, I'm going to select this. And then for the current Y value, I'll select the one under it. So when you select values under it, if I don't delete what's here already, watch what happens. This is not correct. And if I try to exit, Excel is going to get mad at me. So what I need to do whenever I'm dealing with a series Y is to hit delete to get rid of what's in there. And then I can select a cell. So D34, so I'll hit enter. And now I have something called selector. Now here is selector. Now what are we looking at? We're looking at a marker. And that marker is going to change its location based off of the scroll bar because it's hooked to these two cells. So if I just drag it back, you see that it moves. So this is just a series of 1, and that series is dynamic, and it basically follows along every item here. So I'm going to click on this marker, and let's say I want to add a data label to it. So I'll right click and I'm going to click Add Data Label. It puts the value to the right of it. So the data label is how I added the value, but perhaps I don't really want it on the right. So I'm going to right click and hit Format Data Labels. That's going to bring up this context pane. If you're using Excel 2010 and earlier, it's going to bring up a pop-up dialog box. Either way, we have this label position under the label options, and here I'm going to just click above because I think that looks better, and then I'm going to make it bold because, again, I think it looks better. Okay, so this mechanism is sort of working how we want it to, except that when I go down here, I see that this is on 29. Now, I know there's a total of 45 data points, and I know that this scroll bar is going to give me more than 45 data points. Let's just watch what happens. So we're going to take it off the edge. Oh, look, we have a ref error. So this is not what we want. Right now, the scroll bar is going beyond the range of our data. So what can we do? Well, I know there's 45 data points. So what I can do is I can right-click here. I'll go to Format Control. Now recall that this brings up the control properties, and here I'm able to do some edits. So under current value, I'm not going to change that. Under minimum value, I never want it to be 0, so I'm going to make that a 1. Under maximum value, I'm going to make that a 45. And I'll hit Enter. Now if you really want, if you're really into it, you can try to line up this spacer with the dot. And trust me, I have before. I don't know that it's worth it. But here you have the mechanism that allows you to do a selector. We've created the selection mechanism, if I'm going to jump back to final. So now we want to create this mechanism over here that brings back the frequency of tornadoes for each month for a given year. So here's how we can do that. Down below I have January through December. We're going to pull back the information for a selected year into these cells. Now it turns out one way we can do that is with the index function. What we can do is we can go back to the tornado data, so we're looking at record 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is the data we want to pull back. So we know it's at the 7th record. As it turns out, we can use the index function for this. But what we're going to do is actually an array formula. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type in an equals. So remember, step 1 is to get the correct formula. So I'll type in index. I'll do an open parenthesis. And here I'm going to select the entire data range. So that's tornado data C6 all the way down. I'll hit F4 here to lock it in. I'll hit a comma. Now I'm going to jump back to tornado example. And now I'm going to select the row number that I'm interested in. Now here's how this works. Typically, if we want to get multiple columns, we would put them in here. And in fact, we could do something like this. It does work the same way as VLOOKUP. But there's a much shorter way of doing it. And that way goes like this. If we know that we have a table, and we know we want to pull back a whole row, we don't actually have to put in the column information. It can just be assumed when we create the array formula that we're going to pull back that entire row of data. Most of us are used to putting a column in here to describe the column we want. Now, this does work like VLOOKUP, the VLOOKUP trick we did earlier in this course, where if I put in a 2, 3, 6 here, or a 7, and I dragged it out and hit Control-Shift-Enter, it would pull those back. But let's say I want to pull back the full column range, and I don't want to be specific. So what I can do here is I put in the array, then I put in the row number, and then over here in the column, I just leave it blank. I don't put anything. So I'm going to hit Enter here. You see it comes up with a value error. That's okay. Remember, step 1 of doing array formulas is to put in the correct formula. Sometimes it results in an error. I'm going to drag that out to size. That's step 2. Remember, with array formulas that sometimes they look a little funky, but that's okay. So I have the right formula. I've dragged it out. Now all I need to do is go back into this formula bar, and I can hold Control, Shift, and I'll hit Enter here. And you can see now it's pulling back the right information. So that's 2, 47, 31. So we're going to now go check the 7th record in the data. Right here, I have it highlighted to 47, 31, 85. Okay, so this information down here is our intermediate steps. So we have the information here. So here we're doing a transformation. We have some of it fed into a presentation. But what we really need to do is take this information here and put it over here as we did, or as I did in the final version. So let's get started making this table over here. I'm going to go to cell M3. I'm going to type in an equals. Now this is for the year, so it's going to show the year that's been, it's going to show the year corresponding to this selected item. So where can I find that information? It's down here in the current X, so I can just hit enter on that. That's going to change with the years. And as you recall, I also had January through December over here. So I'm going to type in January, February, and then we're going to let the autofill take care of some of it. So there we go. That's going to get us January through December. Now over here, I want to put the tornado amounts. Now I have those. Those are right down here, 18 through 96, this whole range right here. The problem I have is that this range is horizontal and I need it to be vertical. So we're going to have to use another array formula. And remember, array formulas are for whenever you're returning something that's greater than one cell. In this case, we're going to return 12 cells. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to take something that's horizontal and make it vertical? Well, we're going to use a function called transpose. So transpose is actually a linear algebra function that we're going to use to our advantage. And basically, it's going to take whatever's horizontal and make it vertical and vice versa. So to take this and make it vertical, we're going to use transpose, but we're going to do it with an array formula. So I'm going to type in transpose. I'm going to select cell B38 right here, or I'm going to select cell B38 all the way through M38. I'll hit F4 to lock it in, and I'm going to close it with a parenthesis. Comes up with a value error. That's okay, because we're doing an array formula. So step 1, get the right formula in there. Step 2, drag it to size. And then step 3 is to go into the formula bar and type in Control, Shift, and then Enter. And as you can see, it's bringing that data. So it took this data right here from 18360. Let's go take a look. 18360. It looks exactly how we want it to. Okay, the last and final step is to get our in-cell bar chart. So here's a little nifty Excel trick you can use. This is actually not a real chart. It's actually a set of characters. So let's talk about the repeat function. So repeat allows me to repeat a certain thing a certain amount of times. So let's say I type in Jordan here. I want to repeat that 6 times. Now recall that if I want to do an instant compute of that, an instant calculation, I can just hit F9 with it highlighted. So I'm going to do that. And you see it showed Jordan 6 times. So to create a mini in-cell bar chart, so what we can do is use that same functionality, but instead of repeating Jordan, we're going to repeat something that makes it look like a bar, like the pipe symbol. So the pipe symbol is above your enter key, so I'm going to do quote. I'll hold shift on that backslash, that usually is where the pipe symbol is, so shift backslash above the enter key. I'll close that. And then the number of times. Well, how many times do I want to repeat it? I'm just going to select this value over here and close that parenthesis. And you see it made a tiny little bar chart. Now over here, I have the font script 7. Watch what happens if I change the font. I'm going to change it to Arial Black. You see, it doesn't look as good. So I'm going to double click to make that go all the way down. So Excel has really 2 fonts that do the best. The first one is script, nothing. The first one is script, and then the other one, which I like, I'm going to show here, is playbill. So if you make it playbill and you make it slightly bigger, it seems to work really well. So playbill, size 8, bold. Now notice here that this actually goes a little too far. So this stretches a long way, and we don't really like that because that means the top is getting cut off. So in this case, we need to scale. Now, What scaling means is that we divide everything by the same amount, so we still keep that visual proportionality. So over here I'm going to start with 0.4. It's hard to say what the correct scale is. When I teach this course, I usually say 3 just for this problem. So if we divide everything by 3, it's going to reduce it, kind of like that. But there's no real right answer. I could reduce it by 2.5 if I wanted to. And now we've created the functionality. In the next demo, we're going to talk about how to format it.